Hey guys, good morning. Henry from Adventure Air here, and we are here with the famous James Alaggio from Hawaii. Hawaii? No, I don't want to sound like a local.
That's right, Oahu, Hawaii, North Shore.
That's from North Shore. He is one of our auto gyros representatives there, and he's got some exciting, interesting stories about his life. And so, James, tell us about your rise in aviation and your fun stories.
Well, thanks, Henry. It's been quite the adventure. Started when I was a 9-year-old kid. I always wanted to fly, and I flew flight simulators when I was a little kid, but I didn't have a family, didn't have funding. But I realized that when you show up at a little airport and hang on that little fence, every once in a while someone's like, "Hey kid, can you help me clean this? Can you help me do this?" Sure. I tried that a couple times, and they took me flying. And that was really cool. I didn't realize that you can help someone out and let it get you in the air. So did that a few times, and then before I knew it, I was pretty much living at the airport. I was cleaning airplanes, sweeping hangar floors. Did that for a few years from when I was 9 to about 12 years old. Didn't fly too much, maybe just once or twice a month. And then by the time I turned 13 years old, I was offered a job at Fly for Fun, a glider field there at the airport. And they said, "Hey kid, we can use someone to work 7 days a week during the summer. We really need someone to do all the grunt work on the ground from about 6 in the morning till 8 at night, 7 days a week. Would you be willing to do it?"
Wow.
And we'll pay you either in cash or flight lessons. And I said, "Absolutely, I'd love to do that." They said, "During the school year, just work weekends." I said, yeah, sign me up. So I immediately started that, and they asked me how old I was. I said, just turned 13. And they said, "Well, we definitely can't pay you, but we can use you, and we'll give you flight lessons." So I immediately started my flight lessons. By the time I was 14, I was soloing gliders, doing air shows, racing, everything. By the time I was 16, 17, and 18 years old, I was a commercial pilot, and started my own flight testing business, became a warbird chief pilot, did about 3,000 hours of flying warbirds with banners hanging out the tail. Put myself through my first college degree that way. And started my own businesses, and first couple were hard. I eventually did some push flying and demonstration air shows when I was pretty young then. But the big business that I started was actually kind of a surprise. I had one business that didn't really make a lot of money, so I came back home, my tail between my legs, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And we started this business, me and a couple other gentlemen, building these airplanes out of balsa wood and rice paper, kind of like Chinese lanterns. They had a rubber band and propeller, you spin them up. They'd fly about 300 or 400 feet away. They were really engineered to fly. And I had 6 kids from my first class, and we decided, let's do the program in the school. We'll keep them in a safe infrastructure, and then we'll go from there. So the kids were loving it. They're like, "Well, this is really cool. How do I make mine fly better than yours?" Well, I'm like, "Well, you should probably sand an airfoil or something like that." I said, "Well, what's an airfoil?" I said, "Oh, your first through 3rd graders." And I'm like, "Well, this is an airfoil. Well, I got to teach you about Bernoulli's principle. Here's a little Venturi thing." So these kids are just soaking up this information, and before you know it, they're going home telling their parents. The parents come to me a couple days later. They're like, "What are you doing to my kids?" That's something you don't really want to hear these days. I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? They're like, no, you don't understand. My kids come home and they're excited about school. They're excited about math and science and all these different things. They talk about this Bernoulli guy and a Venturi thing and an airfoil, and whatever you're doing, just keep it up. So it was an 8-week program. They built 2 airplanes to keep them. So we decided that we call it a semester. Next semester they build 2 different airplanes, and then it would be different. They'd be different designs and everything. Well, they told their friends, so 6 kids turned 24 kids. 3rd semester I had 83 kids, and they'd start hiring people. Within a year and a half, we had 75 employees, over 2,000 kids, and 120-something schools.
Oh, wow.
And we worked real hard. So that I pretty much worked myself all day, every day. I sold a new school every day. I put on my flight test suit that I used to wear, went to the school, auditorium and everything. And before you knew it, we got new schools every day. Kids were thrilled about it. I'd throw a little airplane after the conversation of what our program is, and we had 400 kids just running around in a circle in the auditorium, and they knew that the interest was there. So did that, taught 2 classes a day, and then I did hiring from 5 at night to sometimes 11 at just a little convenient Dunkin' Donuts, because we didn't really have an infrastructure. And before you knew it, I mean, the company grew. We went so big that the low-income schools of New York City and New Jersey were really interested in our program. So, my partners and I went out there to submit our business plan to the government, and we were funded then by the 21st Century Grant, so that the low-income schools of New York City and New Jersey were able to get our program. So after that point, I franchised, I moved on, I went back to college, got a couple more degrees, and I had just enough money, and I just gave it to helicopter flight school. I'm like, I think for that much I can become a helicopter pilot. They just laughed in my face and said, no one does that. You don't do it perfectly, you're not going to do it. Well, for that exact amount of money, 10 weeks later, I was a CFAA in helicopters.
Nice.
That was almost 18 years ago. So I wanted to eventually show up in Hawaii. I was, a homeless kid. I didn't really have anywhere to go, and the cold winters out there in New Jersey. I had this picture of an old flying boat in 1931, and it was Hawaii. And I said, one day I'm going to go to Hawaii and I'm going to fly for that airline. And that was Inter-Island Airways, which became Hawaiian Airlines. And I said, I'm going to end up there and I'm going to create some magic. That's what I want to do. And so I ended up franchising, flying corporate helicopters, and then actually resigning and going to the world's worst airline that people used to call it was Great Lakes Airlines. They call it Great Mistakes. That ended up being a blessing in disguise. Flew Beech 1900, twin turboprops, 1,000 hours in the first year. I made a whole $9,700 for doing that. Next year I became a captain. I volunteered for the junior base so I could fly more. Flew about 850 hours as captain. Next year made a whole $23,000 that year, which was really great. But I lived in a trailer home in South Dakota with 8 other pilots who were struggling as well. And I just went back and forth to Hawaii just so I could do my research, because now I can jump seat for free. Even though I didn't have much money, I can get out there to Hawaii and I was just camping on the beach just so I can learn about the culture and the terrain, the winds, just the meteorology of the whole situation. And I fell in love with it. I already knew I wanted to go there. It's something that was calling me to it. But when I got there, I knew that there's just so much beautiful energy in this place, and the winds are right and the weather's right. It's very unique. So I promised myself I'm gonna make this happen. So got out to Hawaii, and I kept asking the Hawaiian Airlines pilots. I said, well, how do I work here? I was just jump seating with them Inter-Island. They said, well, you got to know someone. I'm like, hi, I'm James. So how do I get in? And they said, well, it's more like family. It was really hard to get hired back then. So I just didn't give up. I just kept doing it over and over and over again. Same answers, typically. So one time, though, one of the pilots said, hey, I just heard we bought some turboprops. I said, turboprops? I fly turboprops. I can get turboprop, Captain. So I said, what kind? They said, oh, ATRs. And then the co-pilot said, yeah, it's one of those 42-500s. And that kind of lit a little flash in my head. I was like, there are no 500s in the country. That has a specific tracking number. I can track that online. So I went back to my trailer home in South Dakota. Before I knew it, I was just hitting the button, enter, enter, enter to track an airplane that didn't really exist in the United States. Until a couple weeks later, one flew over from Europe to Canada, down to the US, and it had to be the one. And I stopped in a little place called Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And here I am sitting in a trailer, and it didn't move. It landed there, it didn't move. I said, we need to make this happen. So I flew across the country, ended up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and just showed up at this building, and right next to it was this giant white ATR-42, and it had 6 blades on the propeller, so it was a 500 model. I walked in, and I had my 4 stripes on. I was all dressed up and everything, and I said to the front lady, I said, excuse me, do you know who I can talk to about the Hawaiian airplane outside? She looked at me, she said, how do you know it's a Hawaiian airplane? It's all white. Stay there. And then she brought me to the back afterwards, introduced me to this lovely lady, director of HR. She brought me in her office. And she said, sit down, I have some questions for you. Slammed the door behind me. She was very friendly though. She said, I have a couple questions. Number one, who'd you rent that suit from? Because obviously you're not old enough to be a pilot, let alone a captain. And I said, well, actually, ma'am, I do fly these airliners, and I believe I'm qualified for the Hawaiian position. She said, what Hawaiian position? And I said, well, I did the tracking and all that stuff, and she couldn't believe me. She said, really? And she talked about my experience. She said, well, do you have some time? I said, well, yes, ma'am. I flew all the way out here from South Dakota. So she said, okay. So she called her director of training on her day off, came in. She gave me an interview right on the spot. The simulator she put me on was the airplane I flew every day. It was Beech 1900. The written test. So the reason I tell you this is because this is what got me to Hawaii. I won the lottery that day, but I won it 3 times. The first lottery was I got the job in Hawaii. I'm going home. Second was they're making me a captain. Third one was my seniority number was number 1 of the new Ohana by Hawaiian Airlines. So we ended up getting out there. It's kind of a long story, but we'll set it up for another day. Got to Hawaii. They found out that I had a substantial amount of antique and warbird experience. So I was then interviewed and asked if I wanted to volunteer for this position at Hawaiian Airlines, flying their original airplane from 1929, the Bellanca CH-300, which started Hawaiian Airlines. So I interviewed, flew with the chief pilot of that aircraft, and he said, well, it's like you've been flying this thing your whole life. And I said, well, yeah, I grew up flying these things. I learned how to fly Stearmans, T6s, and they all pretty much fly the same from back then. So I ended up doing 500 volunteer tours in that aircraft over 2 years. Pretty much every single day off that I've had. I finally had the opportunity to interview at Hawaiian Airlines, and it was real good.
Wow.
They were able to give me the 767, and then did that for 4 years, and then 4 years in the A330. And during this whole process, I'm also, being a test pilot, flying helicopters. Pandemic, I did helicopter utility, firefighting, tours, and throughout this whole, 30 years of flying now, because next month will be my 30th year flying. No accidents, incidents, violations, so it's very important.
Yeah.
I'm in love with rotorcraft. And I've really emphasized safety and education and training. So I've been teaching in helicopters now for almost 20 years. I guess a little bit less than that, but we're getting there. And I always loved gyroplanes. I have a very close friend. His name is David Pitcairn. And he's the great-grandnephew of Harold Pitcairn, the one that brought gyroplanes to the United States in 1928. He was a friend of Wanda that Sierra's. So David and I always spoke about gyros and how we should modernize them, and how heartbroken we are that most people don't understand the windmill safety plane from the 1920s and 30s. So it's really my goal now. I want to bring back that knowledge, the experience of what should be the safest aircraft in the world, but you have to have a proper education, you have to have the proper equipment. So I was fortunate enough at the end of one of my helicopter missions, this cute little bug of a thing landed at my airfield in Tampa, and it was, I didn't know what it was. It was just that a gyroplane. It was gorgeous. So I was just driving there at full throttle, my little golf cart at 3 miles an hour, whatever it was, and it stopped. The doors opened like Lamborghini doors. It looked real cool. And this kid came out. His name was Jimmy. And I said, excuse me, what is that thing? He says, a gyroplane. I'm like, I know it's a gyroplane, but what kind is that? He says, it's an autogyro Cavalon. I said, that is awesome. That is really cool. And I've seen a couple others that were neat, but that one really caught my eye. And I said, I'd like to go fly that. And he said, okay, great. He thought he was in trouble because I came up and I forgot the flashing light. He was really excited. But I ended up flying that. Ever since, that was a few years back, I've become, you're kind enough to help me with my sport license. Then I became a sport instructor, and then I pursued to get my commercial gyroplane and commercial CFI. So now I'm a full CFI in gyroplanes. And I have a flight school now in Hawaii, and our emphasis is I love hooking people. So I'm an airline pilot by trade. I'm a captain of an Airbus A330 for Hawaiian Airlines. So my goal is I love hooking people. I want to plant that seed, and I want to educate them on how safe the machine is. We choose the safest equipment we can get, and through a lot of research, I choose the German autogyro. 3,100 have been produced for the past 20 years, an incredible safety record. The only thing that we're missing is we need good education. We need great schools like yours, and then what I'm going to be producing is also another level 2 for continuing education. So I love hooking the people. I want to give them a nice foundation, and then I'll send them to great schools like yours. They continue to finish their ratings, and then I want them to come back to me. And we'll be doing mountain training, high consequence training, micrometeorology, all of the things so we can continue so that these people can plan their adventures. Because these really are adventure machines, hence why you probably chose the name Adventure Air. And we really need to educate people on how they can plan these things and understand the beauty of this lovely gyroplane, where we can be inherently safe when we operate them and we have a good understanding. So that's what I've created in Hawaii. I know it's a long-winded story, but
No,
without that little foundation, it's a little difficult to understand how I got there.
Wow, it's amazing all the stuff that you've done and all the aircraft that you've flown. That's pretty
About
wild.
275 models so far.
Wow! Well, guys, if you're ever in Oahu, please go see James and take a flight with him. What's the name of your school there?
It's Hawaii Rotor Adventures.
Hawaii Rotor Adventures on Oahu. And yeah, fly with him. He is an amazing pilot, as you probably can tell. And safety is his #1 concern, which is all of ours. Yeah, thanks for telling us your story. We really appreciate
Pleasure,
it.
Henry.
And please come and see me in Chino, too.
Always.
All right.
Likewise.